For as long as people have heard voices, there have been differences of opinion as to their nature and cause. There have been spiritual explanations in which people may claim to be hearing the voices of gods and angels, and maybe the voices of the devil or other bad spirits. This has often led people into conflict with the leaders of organized religions who have felt threatened by such direct relationships with their gods. There have also been medical explanations, and since the late 19th century, these have focused on the brain. Throughout the 20th century, the idea that voices are caused by mental illnesses, particularly by schizophrenia, has come to dominate medical knowledge. In this view, voices are auditory hallucinations that need to be suppressed with antipsychotic medication. However, since the late 1970s, another idea has found much favour with people who hear voices, that their voices are a psychological response to life experiences, particularly childhood trauma. In this approach, people try to understand the meaning of their voices and then negotiate ways of living with them. This approach has become quite influential, and in December 2014, the British Psychological Society said that hearing voices or feeling paranoid are common experiences which can often be a reaction to trauma, abuse, or deprivation. Calling them symptoms of mental illnesses, psychosis, or schizophrenia is only one way of thinking about them, with advantages and disadvantages. Gail Hornstein, an American psychologist who describes herself as being as interested in patients' experiences as in doctors' theories, has said that we are now living at a time when there is a systematic alternative to understanding madness and treatment based entirely on first-hand experiences. It offers a powerful challenge to our taken-for-granted ideas and has the potential to be more successful than traditional approaches in helping people to cope with psychotic experiences. In this film, Kate, Bob, and Shaun talk about their experience of hearing voices, the reasons for their voices, and the ways in which they have learned to live with them.
What are these voices that you hear? I mean, tell us a bit about that.
I believe that the voices are, to me, aliens, because until I gave them my identity, they never had an identity. They were like genderless. I couldn't distinguish whether they were male or female. And they would tell me that they were coming in their spaceships, and that they were aliens. So hence, as well, aliens, I believe in aliens, so I was more prone to believe them what they say. Because if they said to me that they were God or the devil or somebody like that, I probably wouldn't believe them, because although I respect people's beliefs, I personally don't believe there's a God, because things in my life that happened, I felt that God would have or should have intervened, you know, and because he didn't, I thought, I got to thinking when I was a child, there's no such good person out there. So obviously with me believing in aliens, I feel that voices take on the perspective of what you believe in. As I said, hence me, aliens, so that they can get you by the Achilles heel. They can have that fear, that impact. Because as I said before, if it was God or the devil, I would be like, yeah, okay, there's no such thing, so it wouldn't have that impact. But because the voices at the time wanted to go for the jugular, they wanted that pound of flesh, I knew the way that they would get me was by saying we're aliens.
Okay. I've never heard voices, so just tell me a bit about what this experience is actually like. What happens? What do you experience?
Well, I've had both experiences of, in the beginning, friendly voices, and now nasty voices. From the ages of 4 to 7 years, my voices were actually quite helpful. They told me how to survive by giving me survival techniques. Sorry. But when they were 7, I sort of questioned the voices because I had another form of punishment put on me by my mother. And I believe now that the voices couldn't help me because this punishment could have concluded in death. So obviously voices can't help someone from dying. So I sort of asked the voices, why are you not being like before, helping me? Why are you not with me anymore? Why are you not there for me? And the voices sort of took a nasty approach because they said I was being ungrateful, that, you know, I didn't care about them, and so they've been nasty ever since I was 7 years old till present day.
So where do the voices come from? Are these inside your head or are they outside somewhere? Or?
They come from inside my head. I do hear them in my eyes, in my mouth, in my ears, but they are predominantly in my head where the brain is. That's where they come from.
Right. And can you talk to them?
I can now, yeah. I'll have conversations, arguments with them, but I can talk to them now.
So has the number of voices ever changed? Has it always been the same?
In the beginning, I heard hundreds of voices. And when I was 13, they changed to thousands of voices. They just multiplied.
Right. And do you know why that was? Or?
Yes, I believe it was... sorry. I believe it was due to what was happening in my life. There was a lot more trauma that happened in my life, and I had to leave home, forcibly leave home. So I was in a strange place with people that I didn't know, didn't get an understanding of why I was there, just that you're a child that's, you know, a terrible teenager, you know, and you have to be put in here for your own good. And then things that happened in the home were quite horrific for any child to go through. It included sexual abuse. So that's when, as I say, I feel the voices multiplied and they got more nastier.
And you say the voices are, you believe them to be aliens, but
Yeah.
Can you identify them now, individual ones? Or?
Yeah, I can identify 6 voices that are dominant. When I say I hear thousands of voices, to put you in a picture, it's like you were at a football match and there's so many voices, and the away fans are voices that you can't really quite pick up. You can only pick up certain voices, and the fans that are with you are like the dominant voices. And these 6 voices, I've actually named them after members of my family and people that have been known to be quite nasty with me, not only physically but sexually as well. And it sort of lessens the fear, although there's still a lot of fear there, it lessens it a bit because I know them now.
It started quite early. For me, unknown to me at the time, I suppose really as a child would have a friend, an imaginary friend. It started with me with voices in my head. I didn't actually physically see people. I just heard people telling me to do things. Such an early age, I can go into abuse, that I had sexual abuse, which more or less now that I know, brought on the voices, the trauma and the paranoia that I've lived 57 years of my life from them days. Stigmas from other people not understanding is the main bear of my life. Being frightened to tell people that I've got voices, being frightened to tell people that I have been sexually abused. It's all coming out now in these later years through simply by talking about it, being honest about it. And a lot of my memories that I had forgot as a child, I started to come back, because my interpretation of myself is that I've been mad from such an early age. There's not a day goes past without actually feeling some remorse, having lost a lot of years to this mumble lead, this irritating noise, this not being able to decide things, not being able to judge factors in life. It's been such a hard drive through them first years, but it's even more so in my adult life through my jobs and my work professional. People don't understand. They think you're mad and they stigmatise you.
So, have you ever been diagnosed as having a mental illness?
I've been diagnosed with depression. I've shouted many a times that I hear voices, and I've been totally ignored. And I think from the past 20 years of my life, when I've had, with my own physical health being really bad, the voices have got louder and louder. And in recent years, I've only just really started to shout that I hear voices, and people have started to take notice. I can't remember who told me about Hearing Voices Network or paranoia groups, but I eventually ended up there. Where that information come from, I don't know. Just despair and being fobbed off from one doctor, one physician, from one room to the next. Never any help whatsoever.
So, when you heard about the Hearing Voices Network and the Paranoia Network, what difference did that make?
First impressions, more or less like anybody else. Quiet, very attentive, finding out what was saying what, a different type of fear, because I felt by the time I'd heard the first person speaking in the group about their way that they've got through their life and survived, I started to realise that there were other people and there was room to not be stigmatised in that group, because they were real people to me. I'd never come across people before that were so open about their abuse and their rape that had been committed to them. Many hours I've now been involved in Hearing Voices, the group and the talks and the self-help group, is beyond any medicine. I've been on a heavy, I can't really mention what it actually is. It's called Seroxat, and it subdued me for 10 years because the doctors thought I was going to kill myself, which I'd already attempted. But from that became a dull sort of existence in the world. You get segregated, you get stigmatised, again that word again, and you get more or less pushed into a group that gets pushed back at group to other groups and other areas of the mental health system. And the system is not very good for when you get depressed because you're not being attended to. That was a big part of my problem. I actually opened up and I thought, I'm going to get help here. I'm going to put myself right. I'm going to put myself back into a job. And it didn't happen. I just got bundled on this heavy drug, and I've lost 15 years of my life that I cannot even remember. It's gone. And to break through that, going to Hearing Voices groups was help. It was unbelievable to hear other people. Really, I hate being far worse or far better than other people, But to hear people that have suffered exactly the same as what I'd done and survived, that was my interpretation I got from all the classes, was the survival.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of hearing voices, people often ask me what it's like. It is very hard to explain what it's like to people because you don't experience it. People often ask me the question, is it like your thoughts? And I liken it to the thoughts. In some ways it is. I have an internal voice. Most of my voices I hear from outside my head, from behind me. But I have one that's internal, and it is very similar to thoughts, but the difference is that with the thought process I have control over where that goes. I sort of think things through. I'll think, what's that card over there, where's that going, and I have control over that process. But with the sort of voices internal, I have no control over that where that process goes with it. At first, it's very distressing, it becomes very disconcerting. When you sort of realise that it isn't normal, I think the first thing that struck me, I heard voices from a very early age. I was about 8 years old. At that time, I thought it was completely normal. I thought that's what happened. I thought everybody heard these voices. It was as I grew up and I realised that there's something different about me, that other people don't have the experiences that I have, then it becomes quite distressing and quite, you have to try and hide it in a way. But as time goes by, you sort of develop a resilience whereby I can focus. I could perhaps liken it to, if there's somebody else in this room now with us having a conversation, I would be able to focus upon what you're saying as everybody else would be, and so ignore that person talking away. And that's how it becomes with voices for, over time. Unfortunately, there's times when the voices are very, very distressing, and my focus comes completely over there onto that other person, and I can't focus on what's happening around me. But I think overall, the experience of hearing voices, it is very much like just having somebody there. It's somebody outside my head actually speaking to me, and then I jumbled up a lot of thoughts inside for the internal voices. Yeah.
Yeah. You say these started about age of 8.
Yeah.
So, were those good voices? Were they friends? Were they bad at the start?
Yeah, when I first started hearing voices, it was quite friendly. It was quite warm. I was a child. I was playing, and I heard a voice, and it was just saying things to me, just sort of commentating a little bit on what I was doing. He was playing with his bricks, his Lego, so on, and it was just commentating things. I didn't think anything unusual. I just thought it was. I was aware there was nobody there, but I think it's hard to explain unless you're in that. When you're a child, you're in that childlike state, and this is just something normal. Every day is a learning experience. Something new happens, and to me, that was just part of growing up, and that's how it was. They were quite friendly and quite humorous at times, and it's a hard feeling to describe, but I felt quite protected. I felt quite special. I felt different to other people. Not any better than anybody else, but I just felt, that was different. And I just felt somebody looking out for me. It was company, it was nice, and it was warm. As time changed, as things came, later in life, I got started having a lot of bad experiences. My father abused me. I had lots of neglect at home as a child. I was really sort of neglected, and my moods changed. I think the voices became quite dark and aggressive to me, and became sort of all-consuming, where voices were things that happened to me. There was ongoing, but not really problematic. It was when they changed, the content changed, and the voices could become quite aggressive to me, sort of telling me how useless I am, how worthless I am, that I'm no good at this, I'm no good at that. So I'd have a lot of thoughts of, that people were spying on me, watching me, and voices would sort of egg that on and sort of say to yes, what's that person up to there, why are they asking me that question? Just critical, really, really critical. But again, it changes and it fluctuates, and I think I've realised as time's gone by, I think that's pretty much based on where I am at that point in my life, how happy and comfortable I am within myself. If I'm, I can honestly say probably this moment in time, my life's probably the most content I've ever been. I'm completely happy in relationships, work, life, everything. Voices are not an issue for me. The content of the voices, sometimes, it can be annoying, but it's because it's quite humorous. They try to put me off. Recently I had a job interview a couple of years ago, and while I'm sat there, the voices are sort of saying to me, "Have you seen the size of her nose?" While I'm trying to answer these interview questions, and it's it's quite humorous at times. And somebody once said to me, about a year ago, I was in a shopping centre, which was a friend of mine doing some shopping, a woman, and she was looking at clothes and that sort of thing, and I was just minding my own business, sort of not getting frustrated like a lot of the male stereotype does. And she said to me, "Do you know you're one of the most patient people I've ever met?" And it sort of dawned on me, and I said to her, because there's always something happening for me. I'm always entertained, and the voices, so they are friendly at times, and they are, you know, positive. They're not particularly positive, they don't sort of build me up, but it's a positive experience because I'm sort of entertained. I'm never bored because I've always got something going off, and it's just them times when my sort of moods change, the voices change, and sort of feed upon that and the negativity, and that's when it becomes quite problematic for me.
When did the voices first become a problem for you?
They became a problem. There's periods of my life from being 8 where, you know, I first heard the voice that I sort of call it a soft voice. It was very calm and soothing sort of tone of voice. It was comforting, really comforting. As I grew up, another voice appeared that I called the annoying voice, where it just makes random comments and it's sort of like really frustrating at times, and it just makes really daft, strange comments. But the soothing voice is always, you know, always there, always calm, always friendly to me. When I got into my teens, and you know, I got quite emotional. I suffered a lot of neglect, and you know, I was abused sexually by my father. But the sort of real things that struck me was the emotional neglect that I had as a child. My family completely sort of disowned me, didn't want me anymore, and it was very blatantly obvious. I was sent into foster care and children's homes and various things like that. And it was around that time I had a lot of trouble at school. My teachers were I was bullied by teachers, to be honest. There was you know, one experience in class that I'd had where one of the teachers, unfortunately for me at that time, I'd become so lonely and distressed at what was going on for my family life. I took to sniffing glue. I don't do it anymore, I haven't done for donkey's years. But I took to it, and I'd not been at school for the best part of 6 months. And my teacher in front of the whole class, I'd come back to school, sort of said to everybody, I was playing about or something, if you don't behave yourself, I'm going to tell everybody why you've been off school for 6 months. And I looked a little bit shocked, and I thought, what do you mean? He said, I'll tell everybody you've been glue sniffing. And obviously he told everybody now. And I just ran out of class, and it was that point I was running out of class, and this horrific voice, I didn't realise it was a voice at first, shouting at me. I call that the grizzly voice. It was really dark. He says, get back here now, really sort of controlling, demanding and authoritative. And that voice only appears at times really when I'm in really sort of distress, but it's absolutely frightening. It absolutely frightens me to pieces. I just ran and ran and ran. The voice, it followed me, then I realised it wasn't something behind me, the teacher or something like that. This voice was, isn't it? And that one appears at times when I am sort of really at my low, and then goes away. When things are tight, I've heard that voice for many years now. Hopefully it won't be back again, but it does appear intermittently, that one. The other ones there, they fluctuate in the house. So I've got 4 main voices that are more or less constantly there. The grizzly one that appears in and out, you know, during times of my life when things are better or worse. The other 3 are there more or less permanently. I do hear other voices that come and go. Sometimes I can just hear a voice, you know, for half an hour, and I'll never hear it again for the rest of my life. Other ones reappear and come off. They're not, but the main focus is these 3 and the 4 if you count the grizzly voice. But if sort of over time built up, it started with 1, and then, you know, another one appeared, and another one appeared, and another one appeared. So you know, I think the focus really for me is just these 4 voices. The other ones, like I say, I don't call it a relationship that I have with the voices, but I sort of, you know, I think we have a bit of a mutual understanding of each other, if you like. Whereas the other ones, I don't sort of have any sort of relationship with it because they come and they go. They might appear and never appear again.
From the ages of 4 to 7, they were quite positive because I was locked up a lot in a bunker, and the voices gave me survival techniques like how to find water, how to hide food, stuff like that, how to keep warm. It's when we moved home when I was 7, because of the new form of punishment that happened, the voices couldn't give me survival. In other words, I got nearly drowned by getting my head pulled underwater. So obviously when I said to the voices, help me, they couldn't, because they couldn't stop someone from drowning. So I think, the origin is, you know, obviously as well, what's happened in my life, why I hear voices. I believe I probably wouldn't hear voices if it wasn't for the trauma that I suffered as a child. Welcome to my hell, that was my home. My home was my hell. I didn't want to ever be there. And also life at school wasn't no better because I got bullied because of how I looked. And I was a loner. Teachers would accuse me of not listening. If children weren't wanting to beat me up after school, my mum was, and I couldn't concentrate at school. Teachers would say you're not listening, but I was listening to the voices, thinking, what's going to happen? Is my mum going to be in a good mood? Or is the children going to hit me? What's, they're going to beat me up? What's going to happen? So I couldn't concentrate on schoolwork really. So I was seen as a difficult child, or someone that just didn't want to know. Teachers really didn't pay any respect, any heed to what happened. It was only once they actually said to my mum they were concerned about how I looked, and that's because my mum loved to cut my hair. That was another punishment, but this time she went too far. I looked like a concentration camp victim, and they pulled my mum up about the state of my head. But my mum's answer to that, which was accepted, was, well, she had nits, and hairdressers won't cut your hair if you've got nits, and she wouldn't let me bone comb it, so I had no choice but to cut her hair. And unfortunately, because I'm not a hairdresser, this is what I've done, but I can assure you it won't happen again. And that was sort of accepted, but me, on the other hand, was like, please take me away from this horrible person, who's an alien, and she's saying she's my mum, but she's not. So.
Were you ever able to say that to anybody? Please take me away.
Only in my head, or when I was locked up, or in my own, I would be able to say it. But then the voices would get so angry, they would say things to make me cry, call me a crybaby, a wimp, you name it, they would call me it. So I also realised that nobody cared when I cried. Nobody ever said to me, Kate, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? If I see a child cry, I'll ask that child, are you okay, sweetheart? Is there anything wrong? Because they might have got, separated from their parent, anything really. They might have fell. So I think especially people should ask, but unfortunately no one did.
So why did this happen? What was your mother's story in this?
My mum told me that because she was raped, I was the product of this rape, and that she kept seeing my father. So she would beat me up. She didn't mean to. She would usually apologise after it. But then I thought, well, why does she keep doing it if she didn't like doing it? Then she couldn't really be affectionate. If she did, she would go to stroke my hair, and I'd be like flinching because she could just grab it or punch me or slap me across the face. So it was like she was affectionate 1 minute, and then she just turned the next minute. So when she was, as I say, showing me affection, I was like, what's going to happen here?
And you weren't able to turn to any other adults?
No, my gran didn't care for me. She beat me up, although it wasn't as severe as my mum. She would hit me. She didn't care. She would call me names. If I'm allowed to swear, for example, you're a bastard. I said you should have been aborted. It wasn't rape. I don't believe it was rape. And I'm thinking, and I'm hearing this for, as far as I can remember, 4 years old, thinking, what does this, all these words mean? What is this? So I got no support, and plus my aunties didn't seem to want to know. And my aunties, well, one at least was just as bad as my mum, who beat up her daughter, which I witnessed, but I couldn't say anything because of what was happening to me. So I felt I was part of that abuse. and even to this day I still feel guilty because I couldn't help her. But I see myself as the what you would say is the lucky one, because my cousin got severely beaten, that much, that she ended up with brain damage. She would, what they call in Scotland, not the full shilling, not all there. Really bad learning difficulties with the amount of beating she got, whereas I just went to hear voices. And other scars, obviously, mental scars that will never go away. But I still see me as a lucky one, because I could easily have been like my little cousin, you know, backward.
I was 15, 1967, I was an assistant in an ice cream van. And the ice cream van back wheel run over a child's head. More or less from that point, made me think more around about that time, that's possibly when they did start to get worse, because it was quite an horrific thing to see and be of at age 15. It still lives with me, that it haunts me every day, that. But the voices got strong after that, and by 1975ish I started working for myself, taxi driver in Sheffield. I was battling with those voices every night as a nighttime taxi driver. It was quite hard to do, quite hard. And likewise for every other job that I've had. It's been a constant turmoil and bickering, wanting you to do things that you don't want to do, to be something that you're not. After all, I suppose I'm quite a timid, shy, quiet person, but they make you different. And you shout back at them and you lose friends. Friends are you talking to yourself and they think, hey, what's up with him? It's that stigma again. And I kept quiet about my voices. Very quiet. My wife didn't even know. My brothers and sisters didn't know. And definitely my parents didn't know. So I really battled. And you're fighting everything. There's no relax of it. Not for me, they weren't anyway. No matter which corner I went into, there was always something there wanting to have a go at me, either verbally, physically, or in my head.
You say that you didn't tell your parents about the voices.
No.
Were you able to tell your parents anything about the abuse?
No. My mother was very Quakerish. She was very plain lifestyle. It weren't poverty, but it were plain. She wasn't a makeup artist or anything like that. She didn't drink, she didn't smoke. We were clean, we were well fed. Poorly clothed, but well fed. Father, he was an ogre, quite a violent person. And I'm starting to realise now that battling with both a very timid person as a mother and a violent man as a father can make anybody hear voices, I think, to start with, let alone the abuse. But now I look in hindsight and I can see where the voices are. At the age of 7, I can see why my voices changed when I was 7, from being a friend and then slightly start talking about, well, let's go and try and do this. It's wrong, but let's try. And I was confused on what was nice and wrong and what was nice and right. So it comes, and to a young child, I suppose it's confusing. And I still feel that confusion to this day.
Why did the voices start?
The voices, I don't actually know where they started, but because at that point in my life it was around about the time that I was being abused by my father. Maybe the voice appeared as protective, as I mentioned initially. That voice was quite soft and quite comforting towards me. So maybe it was a sort of appearance with me, sort of that manifestation of my sort of needing somebody there to protect me. The voice, that particular voice, does actually remind me of my granddad. I was very close to my granddad. He was a fantastic man. He was one of my heroes. He's not here unfortunately anymore, God rest him. But he sort of, not long after that, he didn't know about the voices. I don't know what he would have made of it. Oh, great, there's a great man, but he'd probably told me to pull myself together and things like that. But I lived with my granddad for quite a while. My parents didn't have much time for me. I kept being shipped off to foster care. It was only me. I had older brothers, a younger sister. I was sent to foster care, children's homes, so on and so forth, back and forth, and they eventually moved away to Lancashire and left me in Doncaster on my own at a children's home at 14. But during some periods of that, I'd spent living with my granddad. It was a really, really happy time in my life. It was great, my granddad. I mean, a real hero of mine. He was a big, strong man. He was his nickname was Hercules. And I remember him last time I ever saw my real dad is that when I was about 8 years old. My granddad beat the crap out of him in the backyard. I think he found out what happened to me. He absolutely had some scurrying over the back wall that laid at the bottom of his feet. That was the last time I ever saw him. So my granddad, my hero, and I think maybe the voices sort of manifested from my relationship. That soft voice from my granddad, because even though it isn't my granddad, it doesn't sound like my granddad. The tone, the sort of, he's very much like my granddad. So I think that's perhaps where that came from. The other voices, I mean, I have gone through the whole sort of raft of explanations in my mind as I've grown up with this, as more so when things became a problem for me. Why is this happening? I've put it down to aliens, I've put it down to people injecting thoughts into I've had all the sort of explanations, and I think at the time whatever sort of works better for my understanding is the understanding I have that works for me then. I think now, how I feel, I think as time's gone by, I've had a lot of crisis and a lot of trauma in my life, and I think the voices are a sort of manifestation of my inner feelings, really, my state of mind, and I can definitely see that when I put together, as I said earlier, I'm a really content person now, and the voices don't create any problems for me. When I'm really sort of, down and I'm low in mood and I'm quite upset, and I have times in life when, like everybody does, when I have traumas and things like that, the voices become quite dominant, become very aggressive to me, really critical upon me. So I think it's just some sort of process that I have, that I have these feelings internally that I haven't manifested outside. I don't see voices as being a problem, to be honest. I think my reaction to voices is the problem, not hearing voices. I think everybody hears voices to some degree. I think some people may hear them as thoughts, but as again that thought process I described earlier, where you can control the thoughts. I wonder if people have thoughts that they can't control, if that's a voice. I wonder if it's sort of everybody heard voices. I've read literature in the past that it's quite common that people heard voices, and as people have grown up, we've got mobile phones and computers, that people have sort of lost that ability to tune into that a little bit. And I don't know why mine externalise like they do when I hear them outside, but I don't know. I think it certainly comes from the trauma and the sort of things that I have. It's some ways a protective, reaction for me. And I don't understand a lot of things that go on around me. I don't understand. I've given up trying to understand why I was neglected as I was as a child and things like that. And I don't know. I think maybe the voices there, my thoughts, trying to work these things out. And I don't think there's any ulterior force there. I think it comes from me. I have no control over what they say. But it's not somebody planting these things. It's not somebody communicating with me from a different planet. It's me doing it. But how I'm doing it, I don't know.
When did you tell anybody else that you were hearing voices?
Oh, I tried telling my mum in the beginning and my gran that I heard voices and I'd see visions when I was in the coal bunker, but they just said it's an imaginary friend, everyone gets that. But then I tried telling people that I heard voices, but I was never believed. I was, you're in a loony bin. And then I just sort of gave up when I was a teenager. When I was 13, I gave up. I just didn't tell anyone for years. And then when I did tell professionals, it was like, it's all in your head, Kate. You don't really hear voices. Have you ever been on drugs? And have you ever had a drink problem? Or and then they would use all that as an excuse. Oh yeah, it's because you tried hash when you were younger, that's why you hear voices. And it wasn't. I took the hash to help me with the voices.
Right. Were you given a diagnosis at any time?
I was given a diagnosis in Scotland. 1999, when I tried to kill myself. I overdosed after myself being raped, and I just couldn't take any more. I lost hope. And when I came to, I remember getting my stomach pumped out, and then they'd sectioned me and they gave me the diagnosis of post-stress paranoid schizophrenic. Yeah, I mean, one of my voices is the police. It's actually 8 officers, but I make them into one voice. I hear all these. From I was 13, because of the abuse that happened in the home, for example, I kept running away and they kept bringing me back. And then, obviously, I was in a few relationships that were violent, so the police had to be involved then as well. Obviously, when I was raped again, the police were involved. And never really believed, it was like they didn't know how to. I don't know if it's a case of lack of training with the police part, but they just didn't seem to worry, they didn't. And even when, for once, I went with my ex-husband, I had to go to court to get a court order for him to stay away from his violence. The judge was actually more concerned about where my husband was going to stay. He was like, yeah, but where is this man going to stay? You can't just kick him out. And I was thinking, well, he shouldn't have hit me. So even in the court, there didn't seem to be anyone on my side. It was like, yeah, but what of this person? It's like in the hospital as well. It's like the abuser gets away with it. Everybody's more concerned about, what about the people? Or they don't believe you. They'll say, yeah, it's all in your head. But they don't say, what about you? How do you feel? How did you get here?
Right. And you've been sectioned, have you?
Yeah, I've been sectioned at least 5 times.
Right.
From the year of 1999 to 2002.
And what was that experience like?
Oh, again, it wasn't very good. There was one time I got quite paranoid, and I also saw visions. And when I get really bad with voices, I can get really bad visions. For example, I'll see spaceships, and the voices will say to me, they're coming to abduct you, do experiments, they're going to beam you up. So I ran to the nurse and I said, please help me, I'm seeing spaceships. The voices are telling me that they're coming. And they more or less just said, right, go back to your room, we'll be there in 5 minutes. But after about 20 minutes, no one came. And during these 20 minutes, I was getting more and more paranoid. And I was in a little cubicle of my own. And I got quite paranoid that I barricaded the door. And I remember this one time when they found out what I'd done, they weren't happy, and 5 male nurses managed to get the door in, and they just lunged at me. One had a depple in his hand, and they wrestled me to the ground. I felt I was getting raped. The voices were saying, you're getting raped. I was trying to get free, really, really panicking, and I don't remember much. I felt I was getting drugged, don't remember much about it. But my older 2 children were allowed to visit me the next day, and they said, Mum, you were just sitting on the chair slabbering. And I thought, I never want my children to see me like that again, because I had that much medication that I don't know if it was just so I'd be a good patient that I wouldn't cause them any problems. But I was just sitting on the chair like a zombie, just as a slabbering.
Okay.
I first became involved with psychiatric services when I was mid to early 20s. At that time in my life I was married. I was quite an unhappy marriage. I've got a young son. It was obviously quite an expensive time when you've got children, and I was working a lot of hours and things became quite stressful for me. I was working days, I was working nights. I was a musician, I played in bands at weekends as well, and working men's clubs, as well as writing my own material. I worked in a recording studio. I was constantly at it, working. I was in an unhappy marriage. I started drinking quite heavily as well. It's probably time to try and mask out what I was feeling, try and get through things. And the voices just became really dominant at that time in my life. And things just became to an absolute head. I'd start getting strange sort of delusions and beliefs and thoughts. I always thought people were sort of, you know, spying on me and people were out to get me. I'd gone from, as I described earlier, when I was younger, that feeling I was quite protected, that somebody was looking out for me. I now started to feel that I was, you know, being persecuted, and the voices fed into these thoughts and beliefs and sort of started, you know, yes, what's that person doing that for? Why is that person asking you? And I was totally preoccupied with everything had to connect. Everything had to connect for something else, to a reason. And I just couldn't cope anymore. I don't know what happened. I just, you know, sort of collapsed and everything just went like that. Just went into a haze that period of my life. And I found myself admitted to hospital, to a psychiatric unit. I was sectioned quite quickly after that, and that I went on to spend 3 years in hospital. That first admission lasted for 3 years, and everything just changed completely for me during that point. I suffered quite badly in hospital. I think when you're my size, you know, I'm 6'3" and quite a big guy, and you're given a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, then it's terrible, because that stigma that everybody faces, and you know that expectation that I've got accident carrying it around me, and I'm going to kill people and murder people. That's what schizophrenics do. That's what you're told. That's what the media tells us. And I think even within services, people still look at you if you had that diagnosis as being dangerous and scary. And I'm quite the opposite. I think most people who know me will say I'm quite a gentleman. I'd rather not get involved in any sort of aggression, actively seek it, to avoid it if anything. But I did in the times when I try and leave hospital, where I'd be jumped upon and given rapid tranquillisation and things like that. I was actually moved to a secure unit, because a forensic unit, because the police sort of demanded that I was, because they were sending out, when I'd managed to get away from hospital, they were sending out police in vans and riot gear to come and bring me back, and they were saying, the amount of force we have to use to bring this man back is excessive, we need to move into a forensic unit. I saw a letter they wrote that said something along the lines of, Shaun is a stocky 6'3" man with schizophrenia, so will be difficult to deal with. That was a presumption that they made. So they actually requested that we move to a forensic unit, which I was. So, the level of presence they had to use to come and bring me back, they were saying was far excessive. But I do remember one time I went away, I managed to get away, and a support worker came and knocked on my door on my flat. I said, Shaun, I need to come back to hospital. So off I went back there. That's the level of force, excessive force you need to bring me back. Well, please, that's how it is. I felt I was treated quite badly in services, but that said, I met some fantastic, truly inspirational people who really helped me to understand, what's going off with me. And I think a lot of the psychiatric services was throwing medication at me, with the ultimate goal, let's get rid of these voices. And I can honestly say, in all my time doing psychiatric services, nobody ever asked me that question, do I want to get rid of voices? And to be bluntly honest, I don't. I enjoy hearing voices at times. It's comical, it's funny, it's an experience that I don't particularly want to lose. I don't want all that aggressive, horrible, grisly voices telling me all these horrible things about myself. But the whole experience of hearing voices and being a voice hearer, I don't want to lose that. I like it. I sometimes feel a bit sorry for people who don't hear voices, if you like, but it's a great experience at times. And I'm never bored and never lonely. But as I said, that medical, that psychiatric sort of services, let's get rid of voices, where what I actually need is help me to gain a little bit of understanding, whatever that understanding may be to me and sort of relevant to me, to understand my experiences and sort of work out ways of living with them experiences, alongside them experiences, rather than just eradicating them. But I say I met some great people who helped me to get a grip on that and get an angle on that.
But the minor side about hearing voices is the uncontrollable amount of time that it attacks you. Mainly in the morning for me, mainly in the evening, just as I wake up, just as I'm going to sleep. They're the most prolific now, whereas before it was through day. I can now go to sleep thinking about something else and trying to get through the noise. And it's 2.5 years now I've been doing that, and I'm getting there. It's an apprenticeship, and I'm doing it. And I believe that this talking is 90% apprenticeship. Well, I'm going into one of these lecture rooms, and I'm going to say my little piece on what Hearing Voices Network's done for me. What it's done for me is what you see now. Before, I was round-shouldered, head down, dithering about, not being able to judge things, not being able to be decisive. Now I can. This is my first actual standing up in front of some audience of some sort and actually talking about it. And I'm not frightened in the least. I've got butterflies, but I feel that the doctors, the psychiatrists, the hospitals, the surgeries, do not know about what we're going through, and they don't know how to instigate it into your mental health issues. And I feel like today that I'm going to be able to tell somebody that Sheffield is very lucky in having this group. I think I've saved, just on medicine wise, and tablets and potions, I must have saved the NHS thousands of pounds in not having it. And it must be costing thousands of pounds a month to provide it to individuals. So I think there's a step between taking medication and breaking free. And I think that breaking free is talking. And I see it every week at Hearing Voices Group Network and stuff, and paranoid. It does come over. People are learning to be able to cope without injecting or popping tablets. The Ciroxat that I was on, it took me 3 years to come off of that, and it weren't addictive. It just upset I'm on medication now for what trouble it caused in my stomach. Irritable bowel syndrome. I have dyspepsia. Things that I've never suffered with in my life. But I think that's what it is. The talking is the medication.
When Pete asked me to do this, I was trying to think what I should talk to you about. Obviously paranoia, but what I want to do, I want to start the day on on a positive theme and tell you about my story. I'm not going to give you any sort of theories or hypothesis about why I experience the things that I do experience, but I'm just going to sort of tell you my journey about how I'm Shaun and how I became a paranoid schizophrenic and my journey back to being Shaun again.
You go to colleges to help train nursing students and to and you've presented at conferences and that. That's why do you give that kind of testimony? Because these are not good experiences, and you're reliving them when you tell these stories.
I give it to give people hope, because I was always told that I'd have this brain disease and that I'd never recover from. And I thought, and I'm glad it was, Bill, and I thought to myself, no, I want to give people hope. I don't want social worker students qualifying, or nurses qualifying and treating patients the same way I was. I do that. I talk at conferences and do groups at hospitals and outside hospitals to give people hope, to say, look, this is where I am. You could be this way as well. I was once where you were, once in your shoes. It's not the end, and letting people know that they can tell their story and recover. I mean, I use a lot of humour in my story, because otherwise it'd just be tragedy and it wouldn't help probably no one, including myself. But I find that putting humour in my story as well helps me. And if I can reach people, whether it be patients, staff that are treating their patients or clients, any hope, that's all that I need. This is why I can be strong and do it for these people, because I wish that I had someone out there like a voice, someone like Peter Bullimore, who was there for me. Until I met Peter Bullimore, I had no one, but yet this guy was like me. He heard voices, but he had a life. That was the different thing. I never had a life, but here he was, and I thought, he can't be ill, he's the nurse, he's doing that. And this man, and I know he doesn't like praise, but he opened up to me and he shared his experience and he showed me. It was like when you touched his hand, it was love and empathy there, and he showed me how to get my life back. And I just wanted to show people the same, that, take them by the hand and just say, it's going to be a rocky road, but you can do it, and I'll be there hopefully to help you.
Great. I think, do you want to, is this the stuff I haven't asked you about that you think you ought to add?
It's good, especially when I'm doing the hospital groups, because when you see people with no hope or trust. There was one guy when I done the Liverpool group, he hadn't spoke to me for 3 years, and sometimes it could be quite nasty. Excuse my language, I could say, hi, how are you doing? I'll not say his name due to confidentiality. But I'd say, hi, how are you doing today? And he'd go, fuck off. Or he just wouldn't want to know. And then after 3 years, he just came up and he said, Kate, and I was like, oh my God, I was shocked. And he said, Kate, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. And he said, why do you give me time of day? He said, I've half the time been nasty to you. I've told you to F off. I've told you to piss off. He said, but yet every week you would come, you would always have a smile. You would even at Christmas give me a Christmas card when nobody would ever give me one. He said, even my birthday, you seem to know when my birthday was, you'd give me a birthday card, but you always said hello. And I just said, well, you're a human being, and I just wish that I had someone like me that could come in when I was ill. And then he said, can I talk to you? I feel I can trust you now. And he told me that he'd been sexually abused and that he'd shut down because he didn't trust anyone. And it took him 3 years to suss me out and to realise that he could trust me. And now the guy's left hospital. He's got his life back. I'm not saying that's due to what I've done. I mean, obviously, I would like to think that I helped, but it just shows you, even if someone doesn't talk to you and they tell you to either, sorry for swearing again, fuck off or piss off or whatever they might say, just, they're not doing it at you. It's just that they've probably not had anyone to care, to say, hello, even talk to them, even just to say hello, good morning. And just bear with that and they will open up to you, because I know with my experience that this guy did.
Okay. Thanks very much then. I think
You're
that's
welcome.